Hi, my name's Hollie and I'm the Communications Manager here at Haelo. Today we're going to be doing a live stream of communications and how you can integrate those into your projects. So I've broken this live stream down into 4 key sections. So we're going to start with an introduction covering why you need a communications plan and a strategy and how that can really help you develop your project. So to begin with, the first few ideas that we're going to look at is about the role of communications, why I need a strategy, and communications within a project. The role of communications is really important so you can really understand why you need communications within your project. There are different types of communication that you will use to different audiences and different channels. When you're looking at communications, it's also really important to understand how that can add value to your project and your work. So when we're looking at the types of communications, it's mainly broken down into internal and external communications. Internal communications is mainly between staff within an organisation. External is how you communicate to those outside of the company and in the outside world. Traditionally, to communicate to both of these audiences, you'd use different messages and different channels. However, there can be some overlap. Your main strategy will apply to both internal and external communications. It will then be your messaging that you can change depending on your audience, whether that's internal or external. So, how can communications add value to your work and your project? It can help you forward plan and you can create reactive communications. So a communications plan needs to be movable and you need to be able to react to any outside influences. You can agree on goals and identify and seek resources to help you with your strategy and your plan. You can understand the people that are available to help you, the resources, the time and budgets. It's really important to plan so that you can measure success. Within your plan, it's really important to have achievable and measurable goals so that you can adapt and change your communications as you need to. It's also a process to help you learn lessons for the future. By planning and documenting your strategy, this will help you moving forward so that you're always moving forward in the right way and so that you're always putting communications out in the most effective way. So, why do I need a strategy? It can help you gain a position of advantage over competitors, it can help you exploit emerging possibilities, and obviously it can be a detailed plan. Spreading your message and really communicating to your audience and telling them the good points of your work and your project. So what is a communication strategy? It's a written document to judge processes against. It should be a collaboration between a project team and the wider business. You should try and get as much input as possible into your communications plans and strategy. And it needs to identify clear and measurable objectives, a plan of activities, and the available resources that you have. So the types of communication strategy, they can be organisation-wide, so this can be on a very brand level, so it could just be telling your audience about the key selling points of your brand. It could be about a particular project that you're working on at the moment. It could be an announcement, maybe you're opening a new building within your office, so you want to communicate that to an internal audience, or about an event that you're running, and again, that can be internal and external. So communications within your project. As I mentioned, a lot of communications is either internal or external, but within your project, you often find the main reasons for needing a communication plan and strategy is so that you can build awareness of what you're doing, so that you can share success stories, and so that you can develop relationships with those key people within your business, whether that's internal colleagues that you want to spread the message about what you're doing, whether you want to get them involved, and also just making people more aware of the great work that you're doing. So the next section that we're going to talk about is around planning your communication strategy. So once you've first decided on your main aims of your strategy, it's really important to break this down further into a communications plan so you can look on a much more granular level at what you're going to say, who you're going to say it to, and how you're going to say it. So when you're looking at planning communications, a basic plan is looking at the why, what, who, how, and when. So this is covering the why is obviously the aim of your communications, the what is the objectives, the who is the target audience, how is the key messages, and then what channels you're going to use to communicate that through, and then the when is the timescales. So what I've done here then, we're going to just look through this as a draft plan. So I've used a previous example of a I4I team that have run a project previously, and I've just put together a draft communications plan so you can kind of see the types of things that are really important to pick out and how you can adapt that for your project as well. So the aim needs to be really clear and succinct. It needs to be one sentence ideally. So I've put here to maximise understanding of the project amongst stakeholders. Your objectives then, you can be much more granular with your objectives. So your objectives need to be SMART. They need to be specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time sensitive. So I've put 2 objectives here. So the first one is to share 2 success stories via social media within the next 6 weeks. So that's identifying what it is that you're going to share, where you're going to share it, and when you're going to share it. Another objective I've put here is to engage with 5 key stakeholders to deliver information sessions to ensure full understanding of the project within the next 12 weeks. Again, it's being very specific about what you want to achieve, how you're going to achieve this, and all of the different parts of the plan that need to come together within your objectives. So the next area of the plan is the target audience. With most communication strategies and plans, you're going to have more than one target audience that you want to communicate to. So it's really important that you don't just use the same messaging and the same channels for every single audience. So I've broken down here into 4 key audiences that you might want to communicate with. So the first being senior managers within the trust, the second being staff within the Oxford Craniofacial Unit, which is obviously specific to this project, and both of those 2 audience groups are internal audiences. The bottom 2, potential service users and the wider public, are both external, so this will hopefully just show you as well how your messaging can change from internal to external. So onto the key messages and channels. So I've broken this down into the 4 target audiences and then the channels that you'd use to communicate your message to each of those. So the first target audience obviously is senior managers within the trust, and I've chosen a face-to-face channel to communicate with them. This means that you can be much more high level with the information that you're giving them and much more succinct with the communications. So the example I've got here is parental confidence and engagement within the Oxford Craniofacial Unit following the successful implementation of the Chatter Matters project, which will build wider trust and engagement with the trust as a whole. So it needs to be much more high level when you're talking to this one target audience, and obviously because you're using a face-to-face channel, you can adjust your messages as you go. The second target audience is staff within Oxford Craniofacial Unit, and I've chosen email as the channel to communicate with them. The messaging I've put here is Chatter Matters is a language stimulation activity web-based application for children with craniofacial anomalies. The introduction of such an innovative project could encourage further innovation. Using email as a channel means you can give them much more information, but again you can still keep it quite high level and you can include call to actions within that so that they can get further information if they want to. The third target audience, potential service users, and I've assigned printed collateral as the channel for this target audience. So the key message I've put here is language stimulation for children with craniofacial anomalies can now be accessed by parents in the home environment. Chatter Matters can stimulate language learning through music and videos. So the printed collateral can be displayed then around the trust, for example, as this is probably the area where those people will see the information most. The information that you need to give them, again, needs to be just quite eye-catching and to the point, and then they can engage with you further if they want more information. The fourth target audience is the wider public. So when you're communicating to this target audience, again, you're providing them with much less information. It's more just giving them an awareness of the work that you're doing and if any benefits it can bring to them and any way they can engage with it. So social media is a great channel for this. You can provide just little tidbits of information throughout. So Chatter Matters Sing and Say is an interactive web-based application featuring music and videos aimed at children with craniofacial anomalies. This innovative project will be used by parents in the home environment to stimulate language learning for children with limited access to speech and language therapy services. So when using this channel, you really want to sell the benefits of your project and really give the key information to them. And again, this is a great tool that then you can engage a lot of different content across social media channels, which is something we'll come on to later on in the session. So the final area of a plan to consider is the timescales. A lot of your objectives, key messages and channels might be time sensitive, so you might want to run different messages on different channels for smaller amounts of time. So for example, I've put here to align with key objectives, building awareness over the next 12 weeks. So because a lot of our key messages here are quite generic, this can just be used as general brand awareness throughout the course of the project. If you had a specific action that you wanted people to engage with you with, you could run one key message and channel, for example, an email for 2 weeks and with a specific message, and then you could ask them to engage with you over that specific timescale. So, as I mentioned quite a lot in the plan, a really important part of communications messaging is the call to action. So the definition, if you haven't worked with in communications before, is a piece of content intended to induce a viewer, reader or listener to perform a specific act, typically taking the form of an instruction or directive. So within a lot of our key messages, even if they're at a brand awareness level, it's really important to use a call to action. Whether you're asking someone to visit your website, whether you're asking someone to come and talk to you, to attend an event, give them something that you want to engage with them on. So when you're looking at your key messages, it's really important to look at the difference between awareness and engagement. With a lot of our key messages, as I've mentioned before, these are just going to be on an awareness level. I want more people to be aware of my project. Some of these, though, will be on an engagement level. I want people to get involved with my project. And your messaging can differ depending on the type of messaging that you want to use and the call to action you want to use on this. So within the planning phase, we've talked quite a lot about target audiences. So it's really important to really understand who is your target audience and how can you identify them. One really good option when you're looking at your target audience is to conduct a segmentation exercise. So you're looking at who you want to talk to, what message you want to give them, and what influences their decision. So their key decision influences might be where are they going to spend their day? So what channels are they going to be looking at? It might be, do they need to ask permission of someone else to get involved with your project? And those are really important parts of understanding your audience, which will help you build a more detailed target audience within your project. Okay, so once you've put together your plan, it's really important to look at how you're going to implement your communications. So you will have looked at who you want to communicate with, what you want them to do, and how you want to communicate with them. So when you're looking at your channels versus your audience, it's really important to look at whether all channels are going to be applicable for all different audiences, and then the messaging you're going to use across those channels. So it's really important to look at whether you're talking to the right people. So for each channel, are the people that are using those channels going to be the right people that you want to communicate to? For example, is Instagram going to be the right platform for the messages that you want to put out there? Who influences these people? Are they the key decision maker of the messaging you're putting out there? So is that channel going to be applicable? If you have a really important call to action that you really want people to engage with, a much more personal channel is probably going to be better, sending out a personal email to the person to really build that engagement. And then are you using the right channel? So really looking at who's going to be using those specific channels and adapting your messages. As we saw in the previous section about the plan, you really need to adapt your messaging per the channel, per the audience. So what do you want your audience to know, think and do? All of your messaging should follow the AIDA model: awareness, interest, desire and action, and these should be key messages to build your content from. All your content should answer those key questions: why should I care and how does it affect me? So when you're looking at content, it's really important to try and make it as personal as possible, especially when you're dealing with often really intense subjects. It can be really important to try and build those relationships with the people that are going to be engaging with your content. So we're going to show a short video from NHS England that you might have seen before of an example of really great communications within a project. So after watching this video, have a little think of how you think this type of content might work in your project. What are the personal stories that you could pull out of your content to make it more engaging for an audience?
I am William and I am 6. I choose Batman because he's my favourite superhero. When I wear my Batman mask, I feel like I am actually Batman. It makes me feel like I can fly, really.
My name's John, William's dad. We're from Hull and we're here in Leeds because William's having radiotherapy. William has been wearing a mask designed with Batman on it. It's a very traumatic time for all of us, but things like this just make the day-to-day sort of grim reality, if you like, that much more bearable for us and for William.
We started painting masks at the beginning of December last year, so just over a year now, and so far we've painted about 36 masks. Yeah, I feel it's a very rewarding job, it's a very rewarding thing to do. You can imagine that radiotherapy is daunting for anyone at any age, let alone for young children. It can be very scary having to wear a mask that's clipped to the bed to keep you in a still position for treatment. So to see their smiles after I've painted it and to turn something that's quite cold and clinical looking into something that makes them happy and smile is just the best thing, really. To start with, it's not the nicest looking thing, it's quite cold and clinical and sterile. So they are often amazed to see what it gets turned into and that it becomes something that the children might want to wear.
I was surprised that the NHS offered a service like this. It was nice to know they did, and I think it just makes it so much nicer for children to know that they can dress up as a superhero, because basically they are superheroes. And I'm sure if Batman was having treatment, he'd have a William mask, wouldn't he?
It takes me anything between an hour to 4 hours to paint the masks, depending on the design. I have to say they are getting trickier now. They're coming up with some real challenges, so sometimes I have to do it over a couple of days, but I always try to get it ready before the child or young person starts the treatment. Today's William's last day of radiotherapy treatment. He's really looking forward to ringing the end of treatment bell. This is a bell that gets rung on the last day to mark the end of treatment, and it's a great way to celebrate the occasion.
So the final part of your strategy that's really important is the evaluating section. So you really need to understand, why is it important to evaluate and what does success look like for you? You really need to be identifying that within your objectives section of your plan. You're using those SMART objectives so that you have realistic timescales, so that you can understand any key evaluation points. But it's also really important to measure these as you go along. Don't just wait till the end of a project to check, to evaluate and to check how the communications have been going. It should be a very fluid process that you could look at your measures throughout the process and adapt and change as needed. When we're looking at measures that you want to use for your project, these can be quantitative or qualitative. So the quantitative measures could be event attendance, website visits, or potentially if you're asking for donations. And then the qualitative can be feedback forms and focus groups. So it's really important that you use a mixture of those measures and use them as ways to track the progress of your communications along the project. Okay, so thank you for taking the time to get involved with our live stream today. I hope you found it informative and useful. If you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to get in touch via your consultants, who would be more than happy to help as much as possible. And really do be aware of communications that are going on inside of your trusts and your organisations, so that you can really see how communications can add value to your project.